So, hello again, everyone. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I will now be going over the PowerPoints for the book for AWD Application in Web Development 1000 Web Development Technologies class. The book is Murox HTML and CSS 4th edition. Chapter 1, as you can see right here, is called Introduction to Web Development. So, let's get going. Here's our objectives. It's not my intent in here to read slides to you, so I'll keep it up for a minute so you can look at it. The key thing to realize is, in many ways, this is like the first chapter of a lot of different books. And what I mean is, it kind of is giving you the course from a 35,000-foot view. In other words, we're taking a very high-level approach and talking about HTML, talking about CSS, talking about JavaScript, talking about browsers, etc. All right. We'll also get into, as it says, some of the web development issues. Some of these I've already discussed. So these are the components of a web application. What's interesting in this picture is if I had shown you this picture from this book, maybe the 2nd edition or something, you'd have a desktop here, you'd have a desktop here, and maybe a laptop here. But again, as with the advent of the mobile revolution and the more and more importance of tablets and smartphones, you can see how this has changed. Now, people have asked me, is that the cloud? You can kind of look at it that way, because the cloud really is the internet. It's just a place to store things, typically out in the internet. All right, but the other component that's in here is a web server. So if I go in and I type in https://rankin.edu. If I type that in to my address bar here or here or here, send that out to the internet, that's got to be basically go out to one of the servers at Rankin Technical College so they can get me the information I want, bring it back, and through the internet then it can go back to my tablet or my smartphone or my desktop computer. All right. The actual architecture of the internet, if you see this, and it's pretty ugly, but if you look closely there, you can see more than anything else, you've got LAN and you've got WAN. All right? A LAN is a local area network where computers are typically connected together, either in the same room or in the same building, etc. The computers in the room here that I'm working in, they're connected together with a local area network. On the other hand, a wide area network, a WAN, are for computers that are connected, but they're not physically connected. All right. What I mean is, for example, I work at the Rankin Technical College campus in Wentzville, Missouri. We have another campus in St. Louis, which is about, I don't know, 40 miles away, 40 miles west of here, approximately, and there's no way that we would run cable and connect things 40 miles away from one another. So they're connected through a router and a lot of other stuff, all right, and which I'm not going to get into. Okay, web pages, which is what this class is about. A static web page is one that typically ends in .html. It means probably the page doesn't change very often. In order for a static website to change, what you have to do is you have to take the site down, change the HTML, and then bring it back up again. And that's not normally what you'll want to do. With a static web page, you see right here, if you look at the picture, they talk about HTTP. And that's an acronym that stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So you, whether it's your phone, your tablet, your desktop, laptop, whatever, you put something into the address bar which makes an HTTP request, which goes to a web server. The web server finds the associated HTML file that you'll be able to understand and sends it back as part of an HTTP or a Hypertext Transfer Protocol response. All right. On the other hand, most web pages today are dynamic in nature. So if I go out here to Amazon, for example, I can go out and if I wanted to buy this book, I already have it, but if I wanted to, I could go and choose it all right, and then throw it into my shopping cart. So when you have a dynamic web page, the process isn't that different except for the fact that normally there's more than one server involved. So, you again go into your device, you make an HTTP request by typing an address into your browser. The web server then has got to go and contact another server. In this case, an application server, which would contact a database server, which would give information back to the application server, which would give information back to the web server, which would convert that to the HTML, which would go into the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol response back to the client. All right. Here are most of your major browsers today. Chrome, Firefox, Edge, which is meant to take the place of Internet Explorer, Safari, and Opera. I use Chrome as much as I possibly can for just about everything. All right. Lately, I've been having problems with some of the drivers, and I don't know if it's the computer I'm using, which is a little older, or if it's the browser itself. But I did try to uninstall and reinstall the browser, and it didn't help much. So I occasionally use Firefox as well. All right. I don't have an affinity for most Microsoft products, but when I have to, for testing and whatever, I'll use Edge and I'll use Internet Explorer. All right. I also have an Android phone. On my Android phone, I believe it's the Safari browser I have in there. All right. And if you have a Mac, iPhone, iPad, whatever, for sure it's the Safari you're using. And then there's Opera. All right, that's pretty much the order in which people use them too. So Chrome has the biggest market share, followed by Firefox, etc. All right, some languages that you can use when you're doing server-side scripting. So again, this is the server side, not the client. The class that we're in right now, AWD1000, is client side. Next semester, we will go through AWD1100 or 1100, which is C# programming. All right. And then the semester after that, we'll go through AWD1111, which is .NET Framework with Web Databases, where we will use C# along with something that's not on this list, which is ASP or Active Server Pages.NET. All right. Image swaps and rollovers. You put your mouse on something and you can get more information. A very popular thing for an image swap is if we may do this, I don't know, but you go out to a gym and you've got a man or a woman who's heavier set, and you put your mouse on there and then it shows like before and after pictures after they go to the gym. All right. So how does JavaScript fit into this? JavaScript allows for some interactivity in sites. All right. More than anything else. And it could be something as simple as showing you the date and time on a page, to being able to communicate with a server and be able to do things like data validation, handling database requests, etc. 3 common uses of JavaScript. I already mentioned the data validation. I showed you image swaps and accordions. If you've ever seen an FAQ page where you've got a bunch of questions and you click on the question and it opens up a little window with the answer in it, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. In fact, let's see. I'm on page. Let's see. I just wanted to show you this. All right. So what is it? UI.jquery.com. I don't remember. Might not. Yeah, it is. All right. So an accordion looks like this. Okay. No big thing. All right. Now they have code in here. Don't worry about this code right now. All right. One thing to realize, though, is HTML, which is what this is, stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's not a pure programming language. You can't use it to write code that has if statements and loops, etc. In JavaScript, you can, but you can't in HTML. If you put in code that looked like this, it would give you something that looked like that. All right. We'll also get into what's called CSS, or cascading style sheets. So whereas HTML, the hypertext markup language, allows you to put in the content, CSS, cascading style sheets, allows you to style. So you do things like this. And now this, which kind of looks blah, looks a little nicer now. I'm not saying a lot nicer, but hopefully you get the idea. All right. 2 websites to become familiar with. I'm going to put a third one in there. Okay, and I wouldn't normally do this, but I would also say another one is what's called W3 Schools. And you can get to that from www.w3 www.w3schools.com. All right. Why am I telling you that? Because if I go out there and I go out to w3schools.com, what you'll notice, okay, is under their tutorials, there's HTML tutorials, CSS tutorials, Bootstrap tutorials, JavaScript tutorials, jQuery tutorials. In a nutshell, that's this class. So if you wanted to go out and start actually learning stuff that you could use virtually right away, it'd be a way to do it. All right, text editors. Brackets, Atom, Visual Studio Code, Notepad++, TextMate. In the past, I've always used Notepad++ because it's the easiest, not to use, but it's the easiest to show on screen. I think this year I might go with Visual Studio Code. We'll see how it goes. There's an example of brackets. There's also things called IDEs, which stand for Integrated Development Environment. Most of these are not free. Dreamweaver is not free. Visual Studio is free. I mean, you can get free versions of a lot of this stuff. We use Visual Studio not in the first semester, but in the second semester. We will also use FileZilla, which is a free FTP or file transfer protocol program to allow you to move your stuff from your machine, a client machine, to a server machine where other people can see it. Here's the components of a URL. The first 6 or 7 characters, the HTTP:// stands for the protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. We already talked about that. The next thing that you see in there, the www.modulemedia.com, that's the domain name. All right. Recently, I had one of my students create a site. Actually, I had all of them work on this site, but the winning one, all right, this is, I don't know why that's looking like that, but it is. All right. For a friend of mine who's got his own dog walking service. All right. And you can see there's information about him, some pictures of clients, some more pictures of clients, and that's Tom, my friend. All right. And there he is. And got examples of what they offer. Some testimonials. There's even, okay. Contact form. You can jump back to the top, etc. All right. So his is http://www.leavemeathome.com. When you go there, we've set it up so the page that comes up, there is no path thing here, but it's not index.html, it's index.php. Typically, if you leave off the http:// it will work anyway. All right. If you omit the file name, it will usually look for first for index.html, then for index.htm, then for default.html, then for default.htm, then it'll start looking for PHP, etc. extensions. All right. Different ways to access a web page on the internet. You can put the URL right in, or you can click on a link. 3 ways to access a web page on your own server or browser. You'll learn about these as we go through this. All right. Naming recommendations. We're going to start going through this from the beginning. When we create our own site, we will have folders for our images. We will have folders for our CSS, a folder for our JavaScript, etc. We'll use good file names so you'll know exactly what we're looking at. All right. How to view source code? Well, the easiest way is if I go out to a website, If I wanted to see this source code, I'd right mouse click and choose View Page Source. This is the code that makes up this page. All right, the stuff that's in red is stuff that has been commented out. How to view the CSS code in an external file? Very similar to the same way. We'll look at that as we go on. All right, a website that's easy to use. Is it? I mean, this has a lot of the same stuff that we looked at before. It's got the logo, and it's got the heading, it's got a search bar, it's got a navigation area, and it's got important things up above the fold. All right. Again, what website users want is usability. Get in, get out, get what they want. They don't want to do much work, so they want a lot of bang for a little buck. All right. How website users use a web page? Well, it'll differ between users, but they scan. They find what they're looking for. If they don't find it, they'll leave. Sometimes they'll click on links and buttons in hopes of finding what they're looking for. But again, normally what you should do is you should put something in there so they understand. These guidelines were explained when I gave the original lecture, and that is present as much information above the fold as possible. Group related items together. Include a header that identifies the site, and use current navigation conventions. We're going to do all this when we build our website. Test your web pages on all major browsers. Use the newest, latest, and greatest, which are HTML5 and CSS3. And that's what we'll be using. Accessibility has become more and more important as time has gone on, with things like the ADA, the American Disabilities Act. All right, and just the fact, the more public your website, the more you're going to want to make sure that everyone is able to use it. That includes people who are blind, people who are deaf, people who are colorblind, etc. We'll have more to say about that as we go on. All right, there you go. So we are going to be very concerned with having things work on different devices. Here's an example of the Muroc, showing it on a phone in portrait, showing it on a phone in landscape, and showing it on some other kind of device. Finally, the last thing is, what is responsive website design? The idea is that your site adapts gracefully to a different screen size. If you don't know what that means, go back to what I showed you before here. And if you look here, if I come in, whoops, and I start changing the size of the device, notice how it still looks nice. All right, even if I shrink it down more than that. All right, and this is called the hamburger menu, so you can click to open it and close it. And once it gets big enough, the hamburger menu goes away and it gets replaced with a regular folder or regular file structure. That's pretty much it for this chapter. All right, so I'll be back soon with Chapter 2.